How are you doing? I'm Kevin O'Hara, and this is the Alcohol Mastery Podcast, Session 13. Okay, welcome to the podcast. I'm going to start off today with some questions and comments from the Alcohol Mastery website. The first one comes from Peter Brooker, and he said, Day 5, feeling good with the banana smoothies. Wondering if you know how many bananas are acceptable to eat in one day. I'm blasting through 6 at the moment. Well, generally I do between 10 and 12 bananas in a day. I do smoothies. I can do between sort of 6 and 7, 8 in the morning in a smoothie. I've been cutting that down a little bit recently because I've been maybe doing 3 or 4 in a smoothie plus berries, plus a lot of greens, some nuts, walnuts maybe, and some seeds as well. And I found that's just better for myself. I've been only doing that for a couple of weeks, and I've really noticed the difference in my levels of energy throughout the day. I think the bananas were giving me a high, and just with the smoothie bananas, I can eat 10 bananas at once. And because they're sort of still fairly whole inside your stomach, they tend to release their energy a lot slower. But in a smoothie, they tend to release their energy a lot quicker, right? Not as quick as sugar, let's say, for instance, if you had a chocolate bar. So it's not in comparison to that. But just adding berries to bananas, just seems to lower the release of the sugar, and it lowers the spike as well of the sugar that you're getting in your blood. Now, as to how many bananas are acceptable, what do you mean by acceptable? I mean, safe. There's people that say that a couple of bananas a day are deadly, and that you shouldn't eat more than 2 or 3 bananas a day. Some people say 6. One of the best places that I go to for nutrition information is Dr. Greger over at nutritionfacts.org. He's a really straightforward guy. All his information is coming from scientific papers, so you know really that it's not hyped up stuff. That what you're going to hear is fairly good research. Now, I came across a BBC article that says, can eating more than 6 bananas at once kill you? So this article asks, how dangerous is potassium? And they're speaking to a woman called Catherine Collins, who's a dietitian at St George's Hospital in London. And she says that it would be impossible to overdose on bananas. You will probably need around 400 bananas a day to build up the potassium levels that would cause your heart to stop beating. Bananas are not dangerous, and in fact they are, and always have been, very good for you. I mean, in fact, when you're looking at the potassium levels of bananas, they're something like 650th on the page of the most the foods that contain the most potassium, and one of the ones that is in the top 10 is coffee, right? So nobody's saying to you that you should stop drinking coffee. So I mean, I'd just say to you, pack away the bananas. They're just a really good fruit. As a person who doesn't eat meat, they're one of the things that gives me a lot of energy from one particular source. So I get a lot of my energy needs from bananas. I mean, another way of doing it is through melons or peaches. If you want to do cooked foods, you can do rice, beans, that kind of thing. There's a lot of energy packed into that. But I love bananas, so I'm going to continue to eat them. The next comment is from Bruce, and he says, Kevin, tell me why the medical profession, in capitals, accept the fact that there is an alcoholic gene? ? Why do they know that you do not? I've seen this alcoholism problem in more than half my family, both English and German. So please explain to me why you make this statement. Best, Bruce. Well, the medical profession don't accept that there's a medical gene. There is no acceptance that there is a medical gene. This is a theory that is mostly promulgated by the quit drinking alcohol profession, by AA, by anyone who's trying to get you into a hospital. Now, you've said it there yourself. You've said that I've seen this alcohol problem in more than half of my family, both English and German. So please explain to me why you have this statement. I'm of the, you can look at this and say, well, it's a genetic influence, right? You can say, well, it proves it that, half my family have got this alcoholism problem. And it just proves that it goes in families. But, when you're growing up, from the time that you're born until you get to the age where you can consensually do what the hell you want, you're being brainwashed into a lifestyle. You're being brainwashed into a way of thinking about a toxic poison, right? A drug, right? You're being brainwashed into it from day one, right? So, as you're looking around, as you're growing up, as you're moving around your house, as you're learning how to do all these other things, you're seeing in your peripheral mind, your parents may be drinking, your siblings may be drinking, the friends of your parents, your uncles, your aunties, and you're seeing advertisements on the TV, you're seeing billboard advertisements all over the place. So you're getting this slow drip of information, positive information about alcohol consumption. And that is the nurture side of things. So by the time you get to whatever it is, 10, 12, you're already thinking along the lines of people who are adults drink. Drinking is good because I've seen loads of advertisements that say it's good. No matter how your parents try to keep you away from alcohol advertising, you're going to see it in one form or another throughout your life. I mean, it's just a fact. So by the time you do get older, it's easy to step across that line and to start drinking alcohol, to start using this drug. If it was heroin, we'd have heroin problems all over the place. If people were using heroin in the same way as we're using this, if people were smoking pot and pot was legal instead of alcohol, and a lot of people think that if pot was legal instead of alcohol, that we'd have a lot less problems. I personally think that, we'd be a lot less productive if we had marijuana legal and people had switched from, or people started using marijuana instead of alcohol, but that's a different story. But I see it as if you see this thing around you, it's the same thing with, the type of food that you eat. When you go to England, people generally eat English foods, right? When you go to Germany, right, just to take your two situations, people generally eat German foods, right? They speak German as a language. They sing German songs. They do things in a German way. There's a specific sort of a way that Germans do things. There's a way that English people do things. There's a way that French people do things. There's a diet that the French have. Here in Spain, people have a certain way of eating. They eat certain types of foods. They eat at a certain time of the day. I eat my dinner, my evening meal at about 5 o'clock, 5:30, maybe 6 in the evening. The Spanish don't eat, especially in the summertime, until 11 o'clock at night. I could never do that, but it's a part of their culture. It's something that they've been brought up with, Now, you can't say that, Spanish food and Spanish preferences for food is in their genes, right? It's just something that they were brought up with. And it's exactly the same thing with alcohol, right? People are brought up with this alcohol in their system. Spanish people drink their alcohol in a completely different way to the way the Germans drink it, right? You go out here into a restaurant, into a cafe bar at 7 o'clock in the morning, and you'll see people who are going to work who are taking a small drop of brandy in their coffee. It's called the carajillo. And it's like a small shot of coffee with a small shot of brandy in it. But you hardly see people who are drunk on the streets here. Now, maybe it's because I don't go to that type of area anymore, You see it in the youngsters. The youngsters are starting to drink alcohol in the same way as I witnessed when I was growing up. A lot of binge drinking, a lot of people staying up until 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, and there's a lot of problems caused because of that. But that's the younger generation. The generation, my generation, you don't see that kind of a thing. You see like it's a slow burn throughout the day when they do drink. Whereas back home in England, Ireland, Germany, for instance, people tend to do that binge drinking. They tend to drink a lot in a short space of time, and that creates its own problems. So when you look at cultural differences between people, you can see where, you know, some people are the way they are in some countries and some people are the way they are in other countries. And even within countries, you'll see cultural differences, you know. For instance, here in Spain, the people in the south tend to be different to the people in the north. They speak different. They even have different languages, you know. And I presume the same happens in Germany. Definitely happens in England. You look at the way people are in the south of England, you know, in London, around the home counties, and then you go up to Yorkshire and you see how Yorkshire people are. The Welsh people are different. The Scots are different, you know. Sorry for saying England there, but in the UK, you go to Ireland and the Irish are different, you know, and it might be just subtle differences, but they are differences that are caused by the way people are grown up, you know, the way their culture is, you know, the cultural, their culture pushes them in a certain direction. You know, there's no doubt that there are you can inherit genetic things which can influence the way you take up habits or your ability to get rid of habits, but you know, that's completely outside of your control. And in general, it's more of a nurture thing, in my opinion, than a nature thing, right? So I hope that answered your question. We go on to Robert, who says, do you ever feel that you have to do what you are doing because the following you have, i.e., how you would feel if you gave up and started drinking again? That seems like a really scary, but also a commitment. I wish you well. I enjoy your videos and I have improved terrifically, but I still have a glass of wine now and then. I presume what you're asking me there is, do I not drink because of the people that are following me? And is it scary? If I gave up and started drinking again, then people would be, you know, a lot of people would be disappointed, or a lot of people would be sort of, would suffer because of that. And really, you know, that it's not keeping me from drinking. I think it's one of the things that has helped me throughout the years that I've been doing this. Definitely, I won't say that it's not. You know, going out and doing the daily videos and just talking about these things. It's a bit like when you create a habit, it's created over a long time through an accumulation of repetitions, right? So you repeat something over and over again, and the iterations might change a little bit. So, you know, you start off and you can only drink a couple of pints, and eventually, you know, by the time you want to stop drinking, you can drink 15 pints, let's say, right? So, you know, the amount that you consume, the area you do it with, the friends that you do it, this all might change over time, but it's a gradual change. And the same thing goes with quitting drinking alcohol. It's repetition. It's repeating over and over again, not doing something. And that's a more difficult thing to do, because once you do stop drinking, that repetition thing, you know, how can you repeat not doing something? I know it's an easy thing to sort of think about from this, you know, the sense of when you would normally drink, you don't drink, and then you repeat that time and time and time again, and that's how you break down the habit. That's true, but you can never leave a habit vacuum. So you have to fill that space with something, and generally that's why I try and tell people to fill it with a new habit. So think about what you want to do in your life and try and fill that space with something better for yourself, you know. I mean, when I used to drink, I used to do a lot of sitting around and doing nothing else but drinking, you know, staring at the goggle box, you know, or, you know, listening to music, that kind of thing. But it was a fairly unproductive time, you know. So you've got that time when you're drinking, and also the unproductivity of when you're afterwards you're suffering with the hangover, and you know, it just is a big gap from your life, which is completely, you know, you're not achieving anything, and you put all those gaps together and you're talking about a huge chunk of time. Over the years, I've filled my time with a lot more productivity. I mean, this last year I've done the first year of my degree course, and if you'd have said it to me 10 years ago, you'll be starting a degree by the time you're 50, and you'll have completed the first year of that degree, I would have laughed at you, because I've tried to do it twice before. I've spoken about this before, where the first time was in a programming degree, and I didn't even get past the first 3 months. I mean, there was a lot of shit going on in my life at the time, and my son was only small, and I was really struggling with work and trying to build my business. So, it sort of went on the back burner. But then when I started getting the money in and my son was in his teens, I tried again, and I tried with an English literature degree. And the first part of the course, the first year of the course, was just a general sort of appreciation of the arts. So I was learning about poetry and music and literature, of course, and just I think there was a historical aspect in it. I can't remember, but it just bored me. I mean, I thought, because I liked reading that kind of stuff. I mean, I love reading Dickens, and I've read, a lot of different classical authors, going back to around Dickens's time, that kind of thing. And I thought, because I enjoyed doing that I would enjoy doing a degree in it, but I didn't, and I just gave it up for that reason. So doing this degree, obviously a psychology degree, and I really want to, I mean, it's something that I've always been interested in. I've read a lot about psychology over the years, a lot about self-help, and it just fits into what I'm doing now. So even though this first year was gets the student used to the actual day-to-day business of studying. So one of the first things that I learned was about breast cancer, and another one of the modules was on pain, another one was on infectious diseases, and some of it was boring. I mean, just reading about things that are on a cellular level, for instance. I mean, I have no interest in that. I've never had an interest in digging down into things, and finding things from looking at things through a microscope. I've always found that boring and pointless. I'm much more into, looking outwards and looking at the stars and the moon, and, looking at things from that perspective. So there wasn't much of a psychological aspect from this first year. There was a bit, so I'd say taking the whole course maybe 10%. So anyway, that's what I've done in the past year, just to fill out the gaps and stuff. And it's one of those things, when I started out doing this course, I was really unsure about myself, about the reasons for doing it, my history with the Open University as well. I've tried this twice before and I've failed. So this time I had to, the last two times it was a lot cheaper than this time. I mean, this time I think I had to pay about $2,500 for the first year. So, it's a fairly big investment when you haven't got that much money. So I was a bit unsure about that as well. But throughout the process, I've grown, and I understand a lot more about myself. I understand a lot more about the whole studying thing and writing essays. And even though I've written before, it's just not the same thing as writing from an academic point of view. And I knew nothing about that. So I'm learning that very gradually, and little things were annoying me through the year. Stuff like having to spend time writing up the sources and putting those down onto the paper, where I got the information from, exactly where I got the information from, even down to the time of the date that I accessed the information, especially if it was online. So for me, starting this degree at 50, it's just been a challenge. It's just been another challenge, and it's something that I've really grown into over the year. I've really enjoyed. I mean, my reasons to start this degree were completely different, as I said earlier on. I think I'm in a much better place now to do something like this. Experience gives me an advantage over my younger self, because I'm using some of the things that I've learned from many different aspects of my life so far, right? And especially a lot of the stuff that I've learned in the past 5 years. It's also because I know there's a goal. I want to achieve a certain goal. and I have a reason to achieve that goal. When I was doing the programming, there was a goal in it. The goal in mind was to earn some money and to get a good job for my son, for my wife, you know, for the family, and to earn a good living, you know, get us out of the house that we were living at the moment. We were renting a house, and I wanted to buy a house, wanted to get a better car, you know, and just wanted to do a lot of different things, but I had no interest in programming, you know. I thought I did, and again, it was one of those things that was completely boring. You know, the last course that I tried to do with the arts degree, another thing, you know, it wasn't going to make me any money, but it was a different reason why I was doing it. So this time I've got this view about where I want to go, what I want to achieve, and you know, it just proves that if you've got that, if you focus on something that you want in your life and you keep going towards that goal, then you'll get there, you know. I mean, I haven't done my final exam yet. That's coming up in a couple of weeks. I have to do the final exam, so seeing how I get on with that. And next year, I'm not going to start the next year until next September, so I'm going to take a year off, and I'm going to do Spanish, do a couple of intensive courses in Spanish. And the big reason why I'm doing that is because it was difficult to study in July and August here because of the heat. You know, it's just difficult to concentrate. It's sort of, you know, you get days where it's sapping your energy, but you've got to put the time and energy into doing that, you know. That's the reason why there's not been a lot of videos lately, is just because it's difficult to do hard work in weather like this, you know. When you get to 40 degrees, I suppose, is that Celsius? Yeah, 40 degrees Celsius, it just gets more difficult to do that. So, but getting back to the comment, do I feel like I have to keep doing this and quitting drinking because of the podcast? And the answer is no. I mean, I just feel like my life has taken off, you know. It's just moved in such a direction. You know, and it's partially because of the website, but it's not the website in general. If I'd have started something else, it would have gone in the same sort of general direction, you know. I just wanted to do something, and I've been able to get up every morning and do the same things that I wanted to do, you know, like I planned the night before. I get up in the morning and I'm able to put those plans into action, right? Every single day. You know, there's days when you feel tired and you feel crap, just as a part of normal life, but that's just a fact of life, you know. You know, even if I had only a couple of glasses of wine the night before, you're still going to feel the effect the next day, right? If I have 2 bottles of wine, you're definitely going to feel the effect, right? But even a couple of glasses is going to show some effect. Even 1 glass is going to show some effect on your abilities the next day. You know, you might not be able to physically feel it. You might not feel like you're mentally fogged up, but I think you are to a certain degree, you know. And all this thing sort of adds up and adds up and adds up over the years, you know. You get an accumulation of these things. And, you know, it took me a while to get out of that, to get out of the mentality of a drinker. You know, when you start out with the thinking of a drinker. You know, this is how you do things, you know. This is the tool that you use to get through your life, you know. So in the beginning, you've got to find coping mechanisms just to get you through the first few weeks or months. But once you find those coping mechanisms, once you integrate those into your life, then you start to find that life itself becomes a fuel that drives you forward. You know, you start to take in different things and experience different things, experience life being a non-drinker without alcohol in your system, you know. You know, we all go through a lot of our life, you know, before we start drinking without alcohol in your system. You don't need it. You know, when you're a kid and you've got no worries and stuff, you don't need alcohol. And it's only when we get older that we believe that alcohol plays a part in any way, shape or form, you know, whether it's socializing or whatever. You know, I don't need alcohol to go out socializing. I say, I went out yesterday to a 60th birthday party, and there was just loud music and there was a lot of drinking being done, and I just found it boring, you know. And not because people were drinking, but I couldn't hear myself thinking, you know. I couldn't have a conversation with anyone. You know, we sort of, it was in between songs, so there was a couple of people singing behind us and doing one song after the other one. You know, that's great on its own, but you know, for any conversation to happen, sort of waiting for the break in the songs, and you know, 2 hours of it, and that I'd had enough, and I sort of made my excuses and bowed out of it. But you know, for me, before, that would have been last one out the door, you know, and trying to find a taxi to get home, you know, that kind of thing. So I'm then suffering today. I mean, this morning I got up, I was out at 5:45, and I did 3 videos. I did a 14-kilometer walk. I came back and I did an hour studying. I did 1 question on my final assignment. I'm doing this podcast now. I've answered some emails, and I've just got so much done today, you know. And I still felt tired because I didn't get home last night. The party didn't start until 8 o'clock. And normally I'd go to bed at 8:30, and when I got there, because you know, I don't eat meat and stuff like that, and the person who I went to the party with, she said, oh, I'm trying to sort you out some vegetarian stuff. So when I got there, the guys at the party were like, oh, we've got this for you and we've got that for you, and it was all sort of Iceland stuff. I don't know if you know what that is. It's like packaged processed foods, you know, onion bhajis and spring rolls and Spanish tortilla, which is like a potato and egg mixture and stuff like that. And I normally don't eat that, but it's like they were saying, oh, we got this especially for you, and you know, so I had to sort of eat. And then they were over going, oh, there's still loads left, you know, go and eat some more, you know. So I had a sort of a plate full of this stuff, and I made my excuses at 10 o'clock. I got back here about 10:30. I maybe got into bed after a cup of tea at 11 o'clock. So normally, like I say, I go to bed at 8:30. So I felt rough this morning waking up, but I still was nowhere near any way, shape or form the roughness that I would have felt if I wasn't, you know, if I was still drinking. So, you know, there's a lot to be said for having something to pull you forward. I mean, alcohol mastery has definitely done that for me, but it's definitely if I've no reason to start drinking again. You know, I wouldn't start drinking again because of just how much I've got to lose, you know, for myself. You know, the last 5 years is just, I've gained so much of myself back. I've gained so much self-respect and confidence in myself. I've gained so much perspective on my own life and where I want to go in my own life. I've gained so much in the sense that I've got memories. I still remember that first holiday that I had 5 years ago. And I can't say that about any holiday that I had when I was a drinker, you know. I remember Christmases and birthdays and all sorts of different celebrations because I wasn't drinking, and I was there, physically there. I was mentally there, you know. I was in the moment and enjoying the moment and enjoying the people that were there, you know, whereas I wouldn't have been doing that before. And there's so many other parts of this that wouldn't, it just precludes me from ever even thinking about drinking again, you know, let alone the what I know about alcohol and the physical consequences, the mental consequences of taking this drug, you know. So no, I don't think I'd ever go back. And alcohol mastery is, while it is a positive influence in my life, it's not stopping me from going back on the drink. I mean, there's so many other things in my life that are stopping me from doing that. Okay, over on YouTube, David K says, I really like your analogy between somebody getting thinner and still labeling themselves fat, even though they aren't anymore. So it doesn't define them. But he says, calling myself an alcoholic just seems like a way of further accepting things as they are and not trying to live in denial. Just a thought. Well, you know, accepting things as they are, that's sort of putting a label onto yourself, you know. You know, the way you're looking at this thing, not trying to live in denial, is you're trying to live according to somebody else's rules. You know, calling yourself an alcoholic is, it makes no sense to me. You know, when you don't drink anymore, it doesn't make any sense to do that. You know, when you don't smoke, you don't still call yourself a drinker. If you quit drinking, or if you quit taking heroin, if you were a heroin addict, you don't still call yourself a heroin addict, you know. And there's plenty of things that we do in life where we change from one thing to another, but we maintain the forward momentum, you know. We don't sort of keep referring to ourselves as what we were before. Otherwise, the world would go to a standstill. You know, this alcoholic thing where for me, it's an AA construct, or that kind of a thinking construct, where when you're drinking and you're doing something like this and you're saying, well, I want to stop drinking alcohol because of whatever, the physical aspects of it, the mental aspects of it, because it's causing you some problems in your life, you're highlighting the nature of the drug itself. And people don't like that. You know, normal people, so-called normal people who are doing so-called normal drinking don't like that fact, you know. So, you know, from my perspective, when you look at how many people drink alcohol in our society, you know, how many people take this drug, right, and don't consider themselves to be drug users, even though it is a drug and they are using a drug, right? They don't consider themselves to be drug users, right? Which is, you know, ostrich hiding their head in the sand, as far as I'm concerned. I have nothing against people drinking. If you want to drink in your life, drink, right? If you want to take heroin, take heroin. You know, if you want to do any drug, do it. You know, that's nothing to do with me, right? It's your personal choice. Everyone's got that personal choice to do that. You know, there are just so many people who use alcohol as a drug, right? There's a massive drug problem involving alcohol, not only as a personal thing, but across our society. I mean, you're talking about 3.5 million people every single year die from taking this drug. But it's not classified as a drug, you know. It's got all the hallmarks of a drug, right? Everybody knows it's a drug. Who knows how many people suffer every single day because of either their own alcohol use or somebody else's alcohol use, you know, and they're getting the second-hand effects from somebody else's alcohol abuse, right? Somebody else's alcohol use. You know, we're so conditioned to look at alcohol use as abuse once it gets to a certain level that it's, you know, it's difficult to sort of say, well, it's alcohol use, you know. I mean, when you look at it, we've got so many people within our society that take this drug on a normal day-to-day basis, right? We've got teachers and professors, we've got nurses and doctors, we've got police, solicitors, lawyers, judges, we've got politicians. You know, all of these people take this drug and there's nothing thought about it until somebody gets into trouble or somebody does something while they're on the drug. Now, when you look at the harms from this drug, I'll refer back to a study that was done a few years ago, back in 2010. And there were members of this group called the Independent Scientific Committee on Drugs. And they invited two specialists, right? And they went through 20 different drugs on 16 different criteria, okay? 9 of these criteria were related to the harms that a drug produces in the individual, and 7 of these individual criteria, these 16 criteria, were related to the harms that a particular drug had on somebody else, had on other people. And the drugs were scored out of 100 points, and the criteria were weighted to indicate their relative importance to each other, right? Now, once they started to look at things in this way, drugs like heroin, crack cocaine, and methamphetamine were the most harmful to an individual, right? They scored 34, 37, and 32, right, respectively. Whereas alcohol, heroin, and crack cocaine were the most harmful to others, and they scored 46, 21, and 17, respectively, right? So 46 was alcohol, 21 was heroin, and 17 was crack cocaine, right? And overall, when you look at everything combined together, alcohol was the most harmful drug with an overall harm score of 72, right? Heroin had 55 and crack cocaine had 54. You know, as this scale points out, the most harmful drugs to an individual are heroin, crack cocaine, and methamphetamine, right? But overall, alcohol is the most harmful drug out of them all. But when you look at the drug class system in the UK or the drug schedule system in the US, alcohol's not even on that list. Do you know what I mean? When you look at the controlled substances in the US, right, Schedule 1 controlled substances, right, they're described as those having the following findings. Now, this is out of Wikipedia. A, the drug or the substance has a high potential for abuse. B, the drug or other substance has no currently accepted medicinal use in treatment in the United States. And C, there is a lack of accepted safety for use of the drug or other substances under medical supervision. Now, I give you C, right? I think, a lot of the alcohol that is produced is of, quote, accepted safety for use. It's within a tolerable level. But, at the end of the day, how many people, young people especially, have gone out, don't know what the fuck they're doing, right? They take a bottle of vodka and swallow a lot more than they can and end up in hospital, either with severe alcohol poisoning or they die. There's so many young people that die. So many young people get into a car because they've taken alcohol and drive and have a smash up. So many young people just have accidents that are either land them in hospital or they land them in the morgue. And alcohol causes so many other different problems, and yet it's not on this controlled list of controlled substances, right? It's definitely got a high potential for abuse, right? Forget about granny drinking a little glass of sherry. How many people abuse alcohol, right? Drink and drink and drink until they fall over on a regular basis, right? How many people sort of abuse it to the degree that they're upsetting the rest of their lives? They're upsetting the rest of their weeks. They're causing themselves problems in work, or they're causing themselves problems in their family. How many people do that? And when you look at the substances, this part B on this schedule with the following findings says that the drug or other substance has no currently accepted medical use in treatment in the United States. Now, one of the drugs that's on that list is heroin. And if you look at heroin and the medicinal uses of heroin, go over to drugs.com and there's a piece there, drugs.com/illicit/heroin.html, right? At the top of the page there under the heading, what is heroin? It says that heroin is classified as a Schedule 1 drug under the Controlled Substances Act of 1970 and as such has no acceptable medicinal use in the United States. So because it's on that schedule, it's got no medicinal use in the United States. But it's completely wrong, right? Under the generic name diamorphine, right, heroin is prescribed as a strong pain medication in the United Kingdom. So they use it for acute pain, right, in the cases of severe trauma. They use it in cases of heart attack, when people have had heart attack. They use it for chronic pain. They use it for terminal illness, when people are getting pain from cancer and they just haven't got another more effective pain relief for these people, when they're in so much pain because of the cancer, in the last stages of cancer a lot of the times. And once they take the addiction factor out of the thing, it doesn't matter if somebody who's dying from cancer gets addicted to it, then they use it. So that's a medicinal use. So why are they saying in the United States that it has no accepted medicinal use? I don't understand that. So that's one of the factors why it's on Schedule 1. Now, some of the other drugs listed in this control schedule include marijuana. Now, everyone has heard of the medicinal use of marijuana. In this case, marijuana is also listed in Schedule 3, right, for limited uses under the trademark Marinol, right, as a medicinal use. In fact, in the United States at this moment, there's more states passing the law to allow people to use medicinal marijuana, right? But going back to what we were saying about the controlled substances, that this drug or other substance has no currently acceptable medicinal use in the United States, right? So it doesn't say that it's got no medicinal use at all. You know, because marijuana is listed as a Schedule 1 drug, right? If you found out that one of your teachers was using marijuana, you've got kids in the school, and you found out that one of your teachers was smoking marijuana in the evening, a lot of people would say that that is grounds for her or his dismissal because they're a drug user. Do you know what I mean? Yet alcohol is one of the biggest killers. It's one of the drugs that does, it is the drug that does the most harm in our society. And yet there are so many people using this word. I mean, I think that alcoholic is a play on words, right? And it's sort of used to cover up a reality that our society just cannot get out of. If alcohol was legalized nowadays, right? If they tried to legalize alcohol now, it would be slapped straight onto one of those controlled substances lists. It wouldn't be legalized, not only because of the alcohol itself, but when it gets into your body, it turns into this other substance, you know, as a part of the natural metabolism process. So what you have is alcohol dehydrogenase, which is an interior chemical that we've got, that we produce, and it turns the alcohol into acetaldehyde. And acetaldehyde is a more dangerous chemical than the actual ethanol that originally goes in, right? So your body has to first metabolize the alcohol, the ethanol, into this more dangerous chemical called acetaldehyde, and then it turns it into another chemical called acetic acid, which is just vinegar, you know, and then you can get rid of it that way. But, you know, for your body to turn it into a more dangerous chemical, you know, that certainly wouldn't allow it into modern day full use, you know. It wouldn't be a legal drug. But it is a legal drug. The governments earn absolute fortunes from this drug in taxes, right? There is a massive lobby, you know, from the alcohol industry, from in general, you know, and I wouldn't even be surprised if there's a big lobby from the people who are treating, you know, people who have problems, you know, who, you know, the anti-alcohol industry, you know, the alcoholics treatment industry, you know, you're talking massive billions of pounds, you know, billions of dollars that they're earning every single year because of alcohol. So, you know, they would also have a say in, you know, if alcohol was gone overnight, a lot of these businesses would go out of business. They wouldn't be there anymore because the problem wouldn't be there anymore. You know, when we say that somebody is an alcoholic, we're talking about something from an individual point of view, which is deflecting the attention away from the society, you know, the societal point of view. And this all comes about from Prohibition, or the after effects, the aftermath of Prohibition. You know, they knew that Prohibition was a disaster. Part of the disaster was because they just really didn't try to enforce it as much as they could have done. Part of the disaster, obviously, was the rise in organized crime, which is probably directly attributable to Prohibition. But the after effect of that, the aftermath, was that it was, you know, you just couldn't say anymore that alcohol was bad, because if you did, you were a pro-prohibitionist, right? You were for prohibition, and because it caused so many problems, you know, you were going to be a pariah. So everyone started focusing on the individual. So, you know, the drug is freely available in our society. You can go, and anyone can get it once they're over the age of consent. You can go and buy as much as you want, and it's only when you sort of go out and there's any problems with the drug, you cause a problem because you're out of your face on the drug, that this is when it becomes a problem for society and it becomes illegal, you know, and you can be locked away for it. You know, if you serve it to kids, you can be locked away for it. If, you know, there are regulations, of course, surrounding alcohol and who can get a hold of it, who can sell it, and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff, right? But saying that it's an individual problem is deflecting from the societal problem, you know? I mean, because alcohol is within our society, is consumed by so many people within our society, it's a societal problem. It's a problem of our culture. How many people are walking around with physical problems because of the alcohol that they're consuming, right? How many people are walking around with psychological problems because of the alcohol that they're consuming? How many people are just walking around with life goals that are not being met, day by day by day, just daily goals, weekly goals, things that they could be doing within their lives, improving themselves, being a better version of themselves over and over and over again because of the alcohol that they're consuming. And it's just when you look around for information about alcohol, what is an alcoholic, why is alcohol not a drug, all this kind of stuff is just a fudge of misinformation that you find out there, So all I can work on is my own personal self, what I've noticed since I've stopped. I can also work on the amount of people that have sent me emails, messages, just saying I'm X amount of time off alcohol. My life has improved so much, I mean, I can say that my life is 10 times better since I stopped drinking. It's just much better. My brain is much better. I can focus much better. If you want proof, go back, look at the first video that I made. Look at me a week after I'd stopped, right? That was only a week after I'd stopped. But look at the difference between then and now. Look at the difference in what I'm doing between then and now. I can look at so many different areas of my life, from my finances to my relationships, my own ability to do things, to be able to get up in the morning and not have to worry about having a hangover, not have to worry that I'm waking up during the middle of the night and having so many withdrawal symptoms during the night that I think I'm going to die. Do you know what I mean? And, people say, well, the hangovers are getting worse. Hangover is another one of these words that we use, which just deflects away from the problem, which is it's alcohol withdrawal. Now, whether you get that hangover or the alcohol withdrawal at 50 after 30 years of abuse, or you get it at 20 after a year of abuse, right? It's still the same thing. We try and fudge these things and put petty names and labels on this to try and deflect the attention away from what we're doing to what somebody else is doing. I mean, you've no idea the amount of emails I get, the amount of stuff that comes in, messages that come through on the website, posts that come through on the website, just saying, what the fuck are you doing? You've no right to be saying all this stuff. There's nothing wrong with alcohol. And, people who are just talking about alcohol like it's this huge big, has this huge big benefit in their lives and their lives revolve around this thing. I know where they're coming from, right? I understand where they're coming from. I was there. I believed at one stage in my life, up to that stage in my life, that alcohol played a large part in my life, that it was a part of my personal identity. It was part of my personal ancestry. Being not just being Irish, but being English, but, being European. This is what we've done, I mean, when you look at it and you say, yeah, people have been drinking alcohol for 6,000 years or longer, it sort of gets into you and you think, yeah, it's cool, it's something that I can do. But you don't never think about the consequences, the short-term consequences of not just the hangover and the physical feeling, but what the opportunity costs are when you're going through that withdrawal, what the opportunity costs are when you're drinking, what the opportunity costs are to your body and how you could feel now. If I go back, I often think this about my father, that, he was a victim of his own time. They were grown up through the war years. My father was born in 1933, and he was brought up through in Ireland during the Second World War. And I think they got bombed once by mistake. What they thought it was, the Germans thought it was Liverpool, and they bombed the docks in Dublin. But apart from that, they didn't suffer anything. I mean, a lot of Irish people went across and fought in the British Army against Hitler. And I think a lot of people fought against Hitler because if they'd have taken over the UK, then definitely Ireland would have been next, and Ireland wouldn't have put up any fight at all. I think there was one of the things that we used to say when we were kids, that there was the FCA was like it was like a territorial army in England where young lads could join up, and we used to call it the Free Clothes Association. And they said that one of the jokes was that the Irish army had enough bullets to last them about a half a day if there was a real battle. So the Germans would have just swept over us. But they were still under rationing, and they were still under all that kind of stuff, you know. So they were taught to finish up everything on a plate, you know, to eat what was dished up in front of them. And, you know, they'd no idea about the stuff that they were putting inside their bodies. You know, now there's an awful lot more information available, good information, you know, good scientific. There's been a lot of scientific studies done on nutrition. That I think if people from an early age are taught to eat well, that they can easily stretch past the 100-year mark in terms of individual longevity. Tie that with, of course, exercise and getting good exercise. But there's this one big fucking thing in the middle, and that's not looking at alcohol like it's a dangerous drug, right? I mean, I hear it all the time. You know, when I'm doing my research for my own exercise routines and diet, you know, nutrition levels, I hear all the time people talking about, I never put this into my body, and I'm eating this way and I'm eating that way because I want myself to be physically fit. I do this kind of exercise, you know, I exercise 4 or 5 times a week, you know, and I sort of make exercise routines so that on one day I'm working out my arms and the next day I'm working out my legs, and I'll do a lot of cardio on other days, and then I'll do some relaxation, and I do meditation, and I do yoga, and it's all to try and stretch the body, stretch the mind, keep everything going, keep everything running over tip top. And then they'll talk about a glass of wine, and it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know, you're just talking, you've just lost me. You know, you're talking about all this stuff about not putting toxins into your body, and then you're putting one of the biggest toxins into your body, you know, at the end of this, just for what? You know, I just think that it's 1 step forward and 2 steps back. You know, people say, well, you have to have fun. You've got to have some fun. And I agree. You have to have some fun. You've got to have fun in your life. But there is that, also that idea that if you don't drink, that you're a boring, no fun kind of a person. That's not the case at all, you know. I mean, I go out and I have just as much fun as anybody who's drinking. You know, I watch people who are drinking now, and you see them sort of, in the beginning, they're having a laugh and they're having a joke, you know. Drink 1 or drink 2 and drink 3, right? It's all a laugh. But then something happens after drink 3, you know. I'm just saying this is an arbitrary number, you know. With different people, you know, you've got, it's after 2 drinks, or other people it might be after 4 drinks. But you know what I'm saying? After a certain amount of drinks, then the depressant effect of the alcohol starts to kick in, and people start to get louder. You know, they start to think more about themselves. They just get more into themselves, and it's just a noise that's coming out then, you know. And that is not fun, you know. And of course, the next day, they don't remember what they've done, or they don't remember all that they've done. I remember everything, right? I remember everything, and I have fun from the minute I walk into that pub or into the party or whatever it is until the minute I walk out, because I'm not consuming a toxin that's flooding my mind and causing all sorts of chaos up there, you know. So yeah, I don't know. I'm going to leave it there anyway and go on to just take another couple of questions or comments. This one's come from Spiral Red Hand. He said, I got out the other evening, watched the sunset at the beach. Normally, I'd already be a bottle of wine in by 8:30 and would not be able to drive. I soaked that experience up. Still sleeping a little bit, tiredness, since it's only been 18 days, but looking forward to some nice sunrises too. Thanks for the videos. They help. He also had another comment, said, still like to watch movies at night, but make healthy popcorn and drink some fizzy like ginger ale or sparkling water. Kind of funny how it seems to be working for me. Well, you know, that's the kind of thing. I mean, sunsets for me sort of were always the thing that I used to watch, you know, and it was like a drunken sunset thing. It was like, oh, watch this now. Oh, lovely sunset, you know. But unless it's in the summertime, I always go to bed now before the sun sets. But in the wintertime, I love sunsets, right? Sunrises, I get nearly every morning. You know, every morning I see the sunset coming up over there while I'm out walking, you know. And it's just such a, it's a great experience, you know, to get up in the morning, you know, feeling a little bit groggy still. I mean, I don't hop up out of bed like a 10-year-old. I'm 50 years of age. I'm 51 now. So, you know, I still get up a bit, and it takes me a little bit to come around. I drink my litre of water. I sit down and do a bit of Spanish reading in the morning. I'm doing now. I'm reading Harry Potter in Spanish. It's very slowly. I'm having to check the dictionary, once every 30 seconds to check out another word. And normally the words that I'm checking out over and over again because I can't get them locked into my brain. But then I'm out for my walk, and I'm either driving a little bit to go up the mountains in one direction, or going down towards the beach in another direction, or just walking around locally, and I love it. I mean, watching the sunrise on a beach or coming up over the mountains is just spectacular. Alex Xella says, I was drinking 3.5 standard drinks of beer almost every day for 5 years. I noticed that it was addictive and couldn't stop. I stopped a few times and more than half the intake per week, but then I started again, I think he says there. Now I've stopped again yesterday as a plan again to only drink several standard drinks per week. Makes me sick how addictive it is. Sometimes I would drink 7 a day. Well, again, I'll say that it's as addictive as you want it to be. Every time you take a drink, right, it's a choice. If you want to say it's addictive to sort of deflect it away from yourself, then do that, but it's not helping you. Every time you say to yourself, this is addictive, or, this is a part of who I am, and, I've been drinking it for so long, and so therefore I have to keep drinking it, that's the time when you have to sort of start examining yourself, At the end of the day, most people don't quit drinking because they don't want to put up with the discomfort that goes with not drinking, right? Now, that's where people base they put their addictive label onto that feeling. They feel discomfort, so alcohol is the cause, right? So alcohol is the addictive agent that's causing them to feel that discomfort, and therefore they can't do it. And the addictive here, the addictiveness here is not the alcohol. It's not the fact that it's making you want to drink. It's the fact that people don't like discomfort. We're living in a world where people just don't want to feel any discomfort. And that's the addictive nature of it. It's the addictiveness to comfort. If you have that addictive nature to comfort, right, you're never going to get away from any of these things, because once you deal with one thing, you're going to have another thing to deal with, right? And not just an outside substance, but interior stuff, That's the most damaging, is when your own thinking starts to cause you discomfort, and you go, oh, bugger that, I don't want to think about that, So what's the way that I can stop thinking about it? Get a drink, get any other drug, start taking something which takes your mind completely out of yourself, right? And you don't have to think about real problems anymore. You don't have to think about discomfort. So think about it from that perspective, that it's not the actual physical addiction or the mental addiction to the drug, right? Alcohol in this case. It's your your addiction towards comfort and not being uncomfortable. So you have to accept that in some cases, in order to move forwards, in order to change, you've got to accept discomfort into your life. Kayak Makaz says, just to let you know, I've hit the 1 mark today. Well done, Kayak. Done a good job. I bet you feel great. Another commenter with a really long name, I'm not going to try and pronounce, says, is there some reason why one must go all out cold turkey? Why not just drink every Friday, Saturday night? Honest question. Honest answer, if that's what you want, drink every Friday and Saturday night, if that's what you want in your life. Basically, that's it. I'm talking about on this channel, trying to get people who want to quit drinking to stop drinking, who realize that alcohol is not doing them any good and want to find a way out. If you want to drink on a Friday and Saturday night, fair play to you. Janice Gravino Villano says, I have gone to AA for over 10 years, on and off. The most sober time I got was 3 months. My struggle with AA is listening to the horror stories, and then you only have a minute to share your thoughts. I really love AA for the spirituality that it brought to my life. I find it funny that if you don't show up at least 5 times a week, no one even calls you to see if you're alive. It's like any large group of people that say call anytime but really don't mean it. Anyway, enough on AA. Your videos are refreshing and give me hope. I don't want to be called an alcoholic either. Thank you for what you do. You're helping so many people. God bless you. Well, you know, if you're looking for spirituality, right, a group for spirituality, why the hell are you going to AA, you know? I mean, there's plenty of spirituality groups, whether you're looking for theistic spirituality, you know, linked to a particular religion, or whether you're looking for agnostic spirituality. You know, there's a lot of people do that these days. So, you know, you can, there's plenty of groups that you can look for that don't involve alcohol, don't involve going to the AA. I mean, for me, I think it's one of the parts, like you said, where you're having to listen to horror stories over and over again. And it's this drumming in the alcohol lifestyle and keeping people back then, you know, people who are off the alcohol for a year or 5 years, you know, still going to AA and listening to these horror stories and still having to stand up and say, blah, de blah, my name is Kevin, I'm an alcoholic. And, you know, I just don't believe in that. Like you say, I don't want to be called an alcoholic either. So, yeah, good for you. Last one here, Denise Campbell says, Kevin, why don't you get a dog? All that walking your dog, would love it. Thank you. You've been very helpful. Same as you, 30 odd years. Drinking 15 days sober, tried everything. Congrats on your 15 days, Denise. I hope it goes more. And I answered your comment, said I'd love a dog, right? The only problem I have, I've got too much fun with a dog. You know, when I go out walking with a dog, it's just it's a good experience just being with a dog. But I've tried it. We babysat a dog a few times. Rocco, I showed him to you on one of the videos that I did, and he was a big dog, fair enough, but he was just I just couldn't concentrate on doing the videos. I mean, when I'm walking, I get into a sort of a zone. It's like a meditation for me, where you know, I have my notes with me and stuff, and I know generally what I'm going to say. You know, I have a list of certain points that I want to make, but then it's just a flow, you know. So I get into the flow and I'm talking and getting through the videos that way. And if I have any disturbances, I find it difficult to do it on the road. I've done a few videos on while walking on the road, and the car's coming up, and I'm trying to get through that, because one of the walks that I'm doing now is a big 16-kilometer walk around, and it's up through these mountains. And I tried to do the videos going up through the mountains, but that part of the walk is so steep that I can't speak. You know, it's just I just appear breathless in all the videos. So, you know, it's not a good thing then. You know, some fella recently said that I'm either smoking too heavily or I've got some sort of heart disease, you know. You know, I think the video that he was talking about, I was after walking up a hill. It was only in Guatemala actually, but it's a steep hill and it was really hot, you know. And when you're walking up a hill in the heat, you know, you're 35 degrees Celsius, you're talking, you know, it just takes a lot out of you. The sweat is pumping out you, and, you know, your breathing is a lot more heavier, just because you're trying to get more oxygen into yourself, you know. So, but, you know, having a dog, yeah, I mean, I'd love to have a dog around here, and I'd love to take a dog out, but it's just not right for me at the moment. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to end it there, and I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you have any questions or any comments that you'd like to see on the podcast, give me a shout over on alcoholmastery.com. You can leave a comment on the over on YouTube. You can send me an email at kevin@alcoholmastery.com, and I'll include your comment or your video, or your question. So until next time, take care of yourself. Keep the alcohol out of your mouth. Onwards and upwards. Take care. Bye bye.